Single Dad's incredible journey revealed, two women found living in his abandoned farmhouse. Jake could still hear the wind whispering through the cracked windows of the farmhouse, a forgotten promise that now echoed grief. Days slipped by on the farm, each one blending into the next, as he toiled to breathe life into the soil that had been his family's for generations. But every time he knelt to plant seeds, he felt the weight of his late wife's absence pressing down harder. The farm felt like a ghost of their past, where memories of laughter were now replaced with sorrow. Bills piled up like deadfall in the fields. Foreclosure loomed like a dark cloud over Jake's head, a constant reminder that he was teetering on the brink of losing everything that remained of her. With Ellie and Max watching him with wide, solemn eyes, Jake fought to mask his despair. The children, so young and yet so burdened by grief, needed him. He yearned to be their rock, to share laughter instead of silence filled with loss. Staring at the chores ahead, Jake questioned his choices. Was it right to abandon them for the sake of the farm, or should he embrace the unfamiliar territory of letting go? A single glance down the road, the one his wife used to walk down, sent his thoughts spiraling. Would they be better off with a simpler life, away from this dying land? Before he could settle on an answer, a sudden crash jolted him from his melancholy reverie. Heart racing, he raced back to the farmhouse, certain it was a deer or maybe even a raccoon. But the sight before him froze him in place. Two women huddled in his abandoned living room, surrounded by dust motes and forgotten dreams. Clara, a once-cherished schoolteacher, flicked through family albums, while Mia lifted her brush, splattering remnants of color onto an old canvas. Jake blinked, not quite believing his eyes. Why were they here? Why had they invaded his sanctuary? The air thickened with an uncomfortable tension. Clara caught his eye and offered a sheepish smile, while Mia just stared, paintbrush frozen in midair. They were seeking refuge, of that Jake was sure. As the minutes climbed, the casual banter that danced between the women revealed snippets of their own struggles. Each spoke of battles fought in silence, and he recognized a familiar pain mirrored in their voices. Before the overwhelming reality settled in, Jake felt frustration building. Anger churned within him as he weighed the implications of their presence. Was this a home they were trying to reclaim, or an unwelcome presence to choke the legacy his wife had left him? Shouldn't he protect what little remained of their family? The townsfolk would talk. They always did. The judgment would slice into the small remnants of joy he'd just begun to stitch together with his children. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as the tension escalated, something in Clara's voice turned grave. I need to tell you something about my past, Jake. Something you might not want to hear. Her words hung in the air, tantalizing yet threatening. The fragile threads of friendship they had woven could fray just as quickly. The decisions he faced now rivaled the forces of nature he battled in the fields. Would unraveling her secrets jeopardize the small community that was beginning to form around the remnants of his shattered life? Jake felt like he was standing on a precipice between loyalty and self-preservation, uncertainty gnawing at his insides as he considered Clara's haunting gaze. In that moment, the reality of life on the farm shifted, no longer just a matter of survival, but of the untamed promise of connection, bittersweet with the taste of impending heartache. All he could do was prepare for the storm ahead, knowing full well he might face losing everything once again. Jake's chest tightened as Clara's voice resonated through the dim living room. Her words settled heavily in the air, clinging to the dust motes swirling in the golden light. He felt their weight pressing against his resolve. What could she possibly reveal that would shatter his already fragile world? Before we start building any trust, Clara continued, her eyes darting towards the children, there's something I need you to know. He clenched his fists, watching her intently. Impatience bubbling within him, but a flicker of understanding ignited the hope that maybe their presence was not merely a burden, but a potential source of support. Perhaps they shared a language of grief, a valuable connection waiting to unfold. Mia, sensing the gravity of the moment, set her brush paint down, retreating into silence. Jake's gaze shifted between the two women.
Would admitting their vulnerabilities lead to shared empathy or further complicate their already chaotic lives? The restoration of the farmhouse felt trivial compared to the potential unearthing of hidden truths. Years ago, I wasn't just a teacher, Clara began, her tone trembling slightly, as if the confession had a physical weight. I used to be involved in some dangerous circles. Her confession tore through the silence. My choices back then led to regrets too heavy to bear, and I thought I'd left that life behind for good. As she spoke, Jake felt something thawing within him, a glimmering awareness that perhaps all three of them were more alike than he wanted to admit.
They were all trying to outrun their pasts, but could he extend grace to them while he struggled to forgive himself? That moment of vulnerability, however, ignited a spark of discomfort. Could he trust Clara, given her connection to a world he barely understood? Mia chimed in. "We just want to turn this place into something beautiful, Jake. A sanctuary for us all." The sincerity in her voice tugged at his heartstrings. It was a proposition laden with promise, yet also ripe with risk. "Building beauty?" he scoffed, his skepticism shading the moment. "Don't you see? I'm losing everything here. The memories, they're all falling apart." The irony of his statement struck him hard as he realized he was letting fear dictate his life. He was a father, a farmer, but what about being a human searching for connection? Clara looked into his eyes, unblinking. "You're more than this place, Jake. We all are. You're meant for more than just surviving." The sharp truth in her words rattled him. Just like the farm's overgrown weeds, he had tangled himself in the familiar yet suffocating strands of grief and isolation. The children stood nearby, silent witnesses to this burgeoning dialogue. He could feel their curiosity, their uncertainty mirroring his. He needed to make a choice, not just for himself, but for Ellie and Max. Could he risk opening his heart and home to these women? Taking a deep breath, Jake debated the leap he was contemplating. Would he risk sharing his vulnerability for the chance at a shared rebuilding of their lives? The growing tension held still for what felt like forever, and as uncertainty threaded the room, the boundaries of his world slowly began to widen. "Maybe," he finally said, his voice low, "maybe trusting you both is the first step." Each word dripped with apprehension, yet carried the scent of newfound possibility. A connection could emerge from chaos, and they could collectively redefine their futures. But as hope ignited within him, Clara's expression shifted. "There's one more thing, Jake. My past isn't behind me. It's still following me." A heavy pause spilled into the room, icy fingers of dread creeping back around him. What did that mean for them all as they stood on the brink of change? As Jake opened his mouth to respond, an unexpected noise echoed from outside, the unmistakable sound of an approaching vehicle. Had someone come to reclaim the past he had fought so diligently to escape? The storm clouds of uncertainty gathered once more, promising that nothing would be simple on this journey forward. Jake's heart raced as the sound of the vehicle drew closer, its engine rumbling like a distant thunderstorm poised to unleash chaos. Every instinct screamed at him to bolt out of the room, to shield his children from whatever threat might emerge. Yet in the thick atmosphere of the living room, his feet felt glued to the floor, caught between the harsh reality of his past and this tenuous connection with Clara and Mia.
The children exchanged glances, their innocence clashing with the abrupt tension. Ellie clutched at her canvas, her grip betraying her unease. Max, visibly confused, settled deeper into his seat. Jake's protective instinct surged. He was a father first, last, and always. Yet the thought of fleeing felt like another surrender. With a steadying breath, he turned to Clara, who stood framed against the backdrop of a sun-streaked window, her expression a mosaic of fear and determination. "What do you know?" he asked, the words escaping him in a fervent whisper. Clara's gaze danced nervously between Jake and the door, her past seemingly a shadow looming on the brink of an unwelcome return. "I don't know if they are coming for me," she confessed, her voice quaking with the weight of uncertainty. "But we need to be ready. My past has a way of finding me, and it won't rest until it has answers or closure." A sense of dread settled over Jake like an oppressive fog, the concept of risk now morphing into tangible fear. Here was the catalyst. Trust. If he allowed them in, what would that mean for him, for his children? He couldn't afford to harbor another complication in their already fractured lives. Outside, the vehicle rolled to a stop, and the low rumble of its engine faded into silence. The crunch of gravel underfoot sent Jake's heart into a frenzied rhythm. He felt trapped, a man standing at a precipice without the clarity necessary to take a step forward. "Stay here," he instructed the children, asserting authority as he gestured toward a hidden corner of the farmhouse. I'll be right back. Jake moved toward the front door, every fiber of his being prepared for confrontation. As he opened it, a rush of cold air greeted him, sending shivers through his body. The sun blazed behind an imposing figure silhouetted in the driveway. It was hard to make out precise details, but he sensed a formidable presence looming in the frame of the vehicle. "Clara," Jake called over his shoulder, not daring to take his eyes off the stranger. "Get ready." Muffled footsteps approached, and Clara earned her place alongside him, a quiet strength fortified by shared vulnerability evident in her stance. Their unspoken alliance created a sudden warmth amidst the chilling uncertainty. "Jake," Clara said, eyes wide, "whatever happens, remember, I trust you." Jake's chest tightened at her words, the weight of responsibility now intertwining with a flaring sense of loyalty. What stood before him wasn't just about self-preservation. It encompasses a larger narrative unfolding between them, as terrifying yet alluring as any leap he had ever taken in life. The figure stepped forward slowly, every detail sharpened, a weathered face, eyes that held stories of long-forgotten burdens. As they drew closer, Jake braced himself, preparing for what he feared was inevitable confrontation. "How's the farmhouse?"
The figure called, voice rough yet laced with an oddly familiar tone, stirring once dead memories within Jake. For an agonizing moment, time felt suspended, and Jake stood poised to defend everything he had fought so hard to protect. The remnants of his past came crashing down upon him, and an unsettling question bubbled to the surface. Who exactly had come for him, and what old demons were about to rise from the ashes? With an intensity building inside him, the answer danced just out of reach, but the moment of recognition lingered ominously in the air. As the confrontation unfolded, Jake realized the cost of the past would demand its reckoning. What lay ahead would either bind them together or tear them apart, and Jake had never felt more uncertain. Would he have the courage to face this uninvited return? As he took a step forward, the air between them shifted ominously, preparing the stage for the next dramatic revelation. Jake squared his shoulders, rusted memories clamoring to surface, while he struggled to remain anchored in the present. The figure who approached seemed to cast a shadow not just upon the cold ground, but into the very corners of Jake's mind. What was so familiar about him? The uncertainty danced dangerously close to fear, a flickering flame ready to engulf him if he didn't find solid ground soon. "Who are you?" Jake managed between clenched teeth, his voice low but steady, the authority of a father uneasily waking within him again. "It's been a long time, Jake," the figure replied. There was a painful softness in the voice that reverberated within Jake's muddled memories, years he thought had been buried under layers of loss and regret. The tension in the air thickened, suffocating and electric. Clara moved instinctively closer to Jake, an embodiment of support, but Jake felt his defenses crumbling with every passing second. The force of recognition gripped him, yet Jake couldn't allow his heart to betray him. Hope had burned him too many times before. The man stepped further into the sunlight, unveiling aspects of their shared history that Jake had long tried to ignore. "I came to see if you're okay." "Okay?" Jake echoed, the word empty and absurd as it enveloped both of their pasts. What could this man know about okay? Jake hadn't been okay in years. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever this confrontation was meant to uncover, it could threaten everything he had built since escaping the shadows of his former life. Is "who's here" safe? "You've changed, but..." The man paused, searching for the right words. "Some things don't change." Those words echoed chillingly in Jake's mind, heightening his defensiveness. "And perhaps you should know that I don't want anything to do with those old ties." The man's expression softened again, empathy flashing in his eyes. "I know, but I also know that avoiding the past only strengthens its grip. You're stronger than you think, stronger than you were before." "Let me help you face what's looming." Jake's chest tightened. There it was, the key, the revelation he had feared, yet the realization brought a rush of curiosity mixed with irritation. Could it be possible that the past offered him something more than shackles? Could it lead him to understanding rather than despair? The internal struggle roared within him, sowing doubt yet illuminating the potential for growth. Without a conscious choice, Jake scanned the farmhouse, the children hidden from view but sturdy in the walls built with love and sacrifice. He summoned thoughts of who he had become, not just as a father, but as a man willing to redefine his boundaries. Yet could he allow this figure, another reminder of injury and uncertainty, back into that fragile world? "Whatever you think I need help with," he grappled with every syllable, his mind racing. "You need to know something. I won't put my kids at risk again. Not for anyone, including you." The man's steely flavor softened. "I am not asking you to leave them vulnerable. nor am I that figure from the shadows anymore. We live in different worlds now, but the question is, what does this mean for you? How will you move forward? Jake breathed deeply, a mixture of fear and determination coiling within him. His instincts battled his conscience. He felt acutely aware of Clara's supportive presence beside him, silently pushing him to confront what he had avoided for so long. What haunted him wasn't just the figure's arrival. Was it his past, or the revelation of the self he had suppressed? Did he dare venture into the murky waters of truth, knowing it could either drown him or set him free? His heart thundered with uncertainty as he weighed the cost of facing the figure against the need for clarity. What he didn't know was that every word exchanged in that moment would weave together the ties of their destinies, reaching far beyond the walls of the farmhouse. Still, the question lingered in his mind. Could he confront a past that never faded without losing the future he had fought to protect? As their gazes locked, Jake prepared himself for a dialogue that could unravel or reinforce his resolve. The tightening thread of his history beckoned, an insistent pull toward a revelation he both dreaded and desired. The moment of truth loomed, frightening yet exhilarating. Would he reach out or would he retreat? Each choice hinted at the possibility of profound transformation, but Jake understood that with every change came a price waiting to be paid. A decision trembled on the tip of his tongue, ready to explode into the silence, altering everything in its path. Jake's breath caught in his throat, a tangible weight lying heavily on his chest as the silence stretched between him and the figure. Everything he had built, his sanctuary of routine, the fragile peace he nurtured for himself and his kids, was teetering on the precipice of his moment.
He could feel Clara's presence solid beside him, a testament to his determination, and a reminder of all he had lost and fought for. Help? Jake threw that word back like a challenge, thinning the air around them. What do you know about help? You left everything behind. You're standing here now, but what are you actually offering me? The man hesitated, a flicker of discomfort crossing his features. I'm offering perspective. The burden of the past doesn't have to crush you. It can be a springboard. Springboard? The word tasted bitter on Jake's tongue. For what? Jumping back into the mess you left behind? You think you can just waltz back and share some platitudes about transformation? It's not platitudes. You're living proof of the fact that we can change. You did it, Jake. You've built a life worth fighting for. The man stepped closer, the sunlight catching the edge of his expression, revealing a vulnerability that Jake had not anticipated. But avoiding who you were won't let you move on. Facing it head-on can empower you, lead to the self-discovery you've only scratched the surface of. The struggle within Jake intensified. He felt a rising tide of frustration clashing against the renewed hope he dared to entertain. What the hell would you know about my life now? About my children? Each word was punctuated by the thud of his heartbeat, a relentless reminder that this confrontation could shake more than just his confidence. Enough to know that raising kids alone, battling your demons, isn't a smooth road. I've been gone too long, but I did some work on myself, and I think I can help you navigate yours. The man met Jake's gaze squarely, persistent, etched into his features. Jake clenched his jaw, the palpable history between them making the air thick. You think I'm ready for more? To dig up the past? I've been clenching my fists and fighting every step just to breathe freely. I dare not endanger everything I hold dear again. But deep down, Jake felt that small flicker of curiosity giggle softly, taunting the walls he had built for himself. What if this wasn't just about confronting the past? What if it was about becoming more than the man formed of fractures? Perhaps you're right, he found himself admitting, his own voice wavering slightly. Maybe not everything was as it seemed. Maybe the shadows backing me into the corner need to be understood, not ignored. The figure smiled, a genuine warmth that eased the tension. That's the first step, embracing uncertainty. What have you uncovered about yourself since you became a father? This journey is about your transformation too. Jake hesitated. I've learned resilience. I'm a dedicated father. I have strength I didn't know existed. But, the man prompted, his voice a gentle incitement. But the gaps, it feels like I'm constantly trying to fill them while staying afloat. Jake's admission hung thick in the air.
This wasn't just about his past choices, but a plea for the kind of courage he had seen modeled by others, a maelstrom of current and past colliding. "Strength thrives in vulnerability," the figure replied. "Your experience is a powerful tool. Embrace it. Maybe then you'll find clarity beyond this moment." Facing the truth wasn't merely an act of courage. It felt daunting, yet liberating. The idea of standing shoulder to shoulder with his fractured past, rather than against it, intrigued him. It was an unfamiliar emotion, and yet it rattled him with promise. Jake took a breath and steeled himself, a new resolve forming in the depth of his heart. "Then let's get started. But know this, if I feel my loved ones are in danger, I won't hesitate to walk away." The man nodded respectfully, a silent pact forming in that instant, as Jake considered what daring leap might await him just beyond the threshold of his comfort zone. As they prepared to explore old wounds, Jake felt the boundaries of his previous understanding expanding. He was terrified yet exhilarated, the reality that he might uncover untapped reservoirs of strength, mingling with the fear of what lay ahead. As they began to verbalize the shadows that haunted him, a question blossomed in Jake's mind. Could exploring the past truly unlock his future potential as a father and a man? The risk felt colossal, but behind it lay a glimmer of hope he hadn't allowed himself to recognize before. The moment of clarity dawned, but before he could articulate it, a sharp noise broke through their conversation, pulling them back to the present. There it was, a crash from inside the farmhouse, signaling that the fragile peace Jake had fought for was about to collide with his hidden past. Jake's heartbeat surged as the sound echoed through the air, a haunting reminder that stillness was rarely a lasting state. The crash had shattered his moment of contemplation, sending a jolt of anxiety coursing through him. His immediate instinct was to hurl himself into the farmhouse, the urge to protect Clara overwhelming. What intruder might be lurking behind that chaotic noise? "Stay close," he murmured to Clara, who stood wide-eyed next to him, fear threading through her posture. She nodded, her grip tightening on his arm, and together they moved toward the farmhouse, each step heavy with unshakable trepidation. As they reached the door, Jake paused momentarily, fighting against the rising tumult in his stomach. He felt unprepared. This wasn't just about confronting the echoes of his past. It was about understanding the manifold layers of his present. Inside, the dim light revealed a scene of disarray. A chair toppled over, its legs splintered on impact, and an overturned box scattered with memories, old letters, photographs, and items from a past long tucked away. His heart raced not just at the chaos, but also at the realization that within this storm of debris lay fragments of himself he had deliberately obscured.
Clara knelt beside the box, her young fingers sifting through the detritus, effectively pulling him back from the precipice of panic. "Look, Dad, isn't this your old baseball trophy?" she asked, holding aloft a relic of his youth, an emblem of triumph that now felt steeped in nostalgia and regret. "Yeah," he replied, a tremor of wistfulness creeping into his voice. "That was a long time ago." As he stepped further into the space, Jake felt the weight of the past encompassing him. Each object whispered stories he had sworn to forget. In seeking to manage his current role as a father, he had buried the parts of himself that formed the core of who he was, or perhaps who he could still become. "What are you doing with all this stuff?" Clara's innocent inquiry pulled Jake from the spiral of his thoughts. "Not sure," he admitted, battling against the emotions that twisted within him. "Maybe it's time to figure out what these items mean, just like we're figuring out what we mean in each other's lives." "Does it hurt to think about it?" "It can," he conceded, watching as her young mind processed the deeper meaning stitched into his words. "But ignoring it doesn't help either. It's like running away," Clara finished, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "Exactly. It's not about fleeing, it's about facing things head-on," Jake said, surprised by the depth of her insight. In that moment, he saw a reflection of his own struggles in her youthful learning, a shared journey, a dialogue that transcended their ages. Just then, the figure from outside stepped into the doorway, a palpable tension rising around him. "You're going to need each other for this," he said, his voice steady. "Clearing out what was left behind can open the door to what lies ahead, but you can't do it buried in fear." Jake felt his chest tightened, words punctured by uncertainty. This man had become a catalyst for Jake not only to reconvene with his past, but also to redefine what it meant to be a father. Embracing that past might ignite the very change he sought to protect. "Are you ready to start?" the man asked, a challenge lacing his tone. Jake glanced at Clara, who was looking up at him with a mixture of hope and curiosity, then back at the chaos around him. Each cherished memory, each painful reminder lay sprawled before him, intertwined.
This wasn't merely about sifting through belongings, it was about reclaiming pieces of himself, an arduous task imbued with profound significance. "Yes," Jake affirmed, a newfound resolve strengthening his voice. "I'm ready." As they began to sort through the remnants of his past, the notion that they were building a foundation together, separating the past from potential, excited him. It was time to unearth truths that had been buried too deep. But just as clarity began to solidify, the figure's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face paling. "We have a problem. You need to see this."
The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. Uncertainty lodged itself firmly into the pit of Jake's stomach once again. What awaited him next felt dangerously close to chaos. Yet another step into the unknown had begun its march toward him, and this time there was no denying it. He couldn't shake the feeling that more than just memories lay ahead. It seemed the storm was only just beginning to brew, impacting not only his revelations, but his family's fragile safety. What lay behind those walls remained unseen, and Jake realized that facing the past would also intertwine with confronting unknown adversities of the present. With a deep breath, he prepared for what might come next. Would his revelations bring healing, or only deeper scars? The moment had arrived. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he absorbed the gravity of the situation before him. The dim light in the farmhouse felt even dimmer now, consuming the warmth of hope they had just ignited. Clara remained close to him, her innocence laced with an understanding that belied her young age. The figure waited, a silent sentinel against the backdrop of his past and impending uncertainties. "What is it?" Jake asked, impatience mingling with dread. The man gestured for them to follow him deeper into the house, urgency evident in his stance. "There's something you need to see. It's not just what you found, it's about what's still lurking here," he replied, his eyes darting toward the shadows beyond. As they moved forward, Jake silently questioned his intuition. Was he truly ready to confront whatever specter of his past was tied to this farmhouse? The sensations roiling within him suggested that the upcoming confrontation would stretch beyond mere objects and memories. It could unravel parts of himself he had fought hard to bury. Stepping into another room, Jake hesitated, the weight of nostalgia fighting back against his burgeoning determination. The walls were plastered with old wallpaper, peeling slightly, revealing layers of age that had accumulated over decades. This space had once been alive with laughter and possibly dreams. Now it felt like the universe had turned its back on it. "Here," the man said, beckoning toward an old trunk in the corner, untouched by time. "Open it." Jake's jaw tightened as he approached the trunk. Clara's hand slipped into him, grounding him for the task ahead. The uncertainty of their journey pressed in around him. The emotions of nostalgia, fear, and curiosity collided within. With a deep breath, he kneeled and lifted the lid. Dust cascaded like lost memories rising to the surface. Inside lay letters, personal documents, and photographs portraying moments long obscured by regret. Yet there was also something more ominous. A stack of yellowed newspaper clippings with headlines Jake didn't recognize, each one brimming with implications he couldn't yet decipher. "What are these?" he breathed, his heart rate quickening at the sheer weight of forgotten stories. "They speak of figures living in the shadows of this farmhouse, Jake. Your past is woven into this place in ways you might not be aware of," the figure said with quiet intensity. "It's time to understand what you've inherited, not just what you've discarded." Jake's mind raced. The stories of old could pulse through his veins, shaping his narrative without him ever realizing it. What legacy had he unwittingly carried into fatherhood? What ghosts lingered in the folds of this chaos? "Dad?" Clara's voice broke through the tangle of thoughts, her eyes scanning his face for reassurance. "What if they're not good stories?" Her innocent question echoed a fear Jake harbored deep within himself. "Then we find a way to change them," he responded, a fierce protectiveness sparking in him. Tentatively, he reached for a newspaper clipping, processing the words frozen on the page. The farmhouse linked to violent events from years past, alleged hauntings of its former inhabitants. "Why are these here, and why can't I remember?" he muttered, the pieces of his memories swirling into a disjointed mosaic. Those fragments from his childhood felt like mere shadows now, rarely connecting to his present reality. Clara squeezed his hand tighter, reflecting a shared determination. "We can figure it out, together, just like we are now." The man, watching the exchange, nodded in agreement. This isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about empowering your future. The fear can only persist if it's ignored, but the truth will break through that wall of fear. Jake felt compelled to push further. What would I need to do to confront this? Cleaning out the attic is one thing, facing the truth is another. The bravado in his voice struggled against the weight of deep-seated insecurity. Awareness is the first step, the man said, getting closer. But clarity comes from engagement. You'll need to uncover every layer, every story, including the lives of the women connected to this place. Jake's breath caught. Who were these women? What had they endured beneath the surface of the farmhouse's luster? Unraveling the narratives felt like a forge, an intense heat morphing the raw material of fear and legacy into clarity and strength. With Clara by his side, the quest crystallized, a dual exploration of heritage and self. His path was becoming evident, yet engulfing shadows loomed, threatening to unearth not just stories, but buried emotions. Will you do it? The man pressed gently, eyes penetrating yet supportive. We have to, Jake asserted, determination sharpening his resolve. The question now was not just about confronting the past, but also whether he could harness it to rise anew. Just then, the sound of rustling from the corner of the room caught their attention, an unsettling reminder that the ghosts of the past rarely remain silent. What was that? Clara whispered, her grip on Jake tightening. Jake's heart thundered, and he turned, dread creeping back into his core.
Facing what lived in the shadows was now not just a metaphor, it might soon become reality. He steeled himself, ready to meet whatever truth awaited him. But could he truly summon the courage to face not only the remnants of his past, but also confront the very real threats that it beckoned? The moment loomed ahead, its impact palpable. Would this journey yield healing, or would it plunge them deeper into chaos? The only certainty was that it had only just begun. The rustling grew louder, a mercurial whisper against the wooden floors that felt unnervingly alive. Jake's instincts screamed for him to act, but he found himself momentarily frozen, grappling with a swirl of emotions: fear, curiosity, determination. Clara's small hand was a tether, grounding him in this moment of escalating tension. "Stay close," he murmured, letting instinct guide him as he stepped toward the source of the sound. The man's watchful gaze bore into the shadows, urging caution, yet weighing heavily with unspoken knowledge. As Jake approached, the rustling transformed into gentle scurrying. He squinted against the dim light, unsure of what he would find. It wasn't a ghost. The thought almost made him laugh with the absurdity of it, yet the last threads of rationality clashed with his collective anxieties. In the back of his mind, the stories that had once seemed like mere fictitious fabrications were now vibrant entities that demanded acknowledgement. He peered into a shadowy corner, his heart racing as he illuminated the area with a trembling phone flashlight. There, tucked against the wall, were two kittens, their tiny bodies huddling against the damp floor, eyes wide with fear and confusion. A wave of relief washed over him, yet it was quickly overshadowed by a deeper realization. "Just kittens?" breathed, exhaling a soft laugh that felt like a blessing to the charged air. The man chuckled gently, but Jake remained engulfed in reflective silence. "Sometimes fear takes innocent shapes," he murmured, contemplating the layers of fear embedded in his own psyche. These kittens reminded him of life's untamed nature. They were fragile yet resilient, synonymous with the weighty past he now held. His thoughts churned as the man explained the rough history of the farmhouse, intertwining with stories of abandoned animals and fleeting hope. Over time, he had fostered a vision of restoration, providing care to lost souls, both human and otherwise. "Are you ready to take that repair beyond these walls?" the man asked quietly, his gaze penetrating. Jake felt the layers of his past untangling for the first time. The echoes of neglect and hope merged into a summoning drive to engage with every fragment of history pulsating through the air, every suspenseful and silent story that had breathlessly waited for recognition. "What do you suggest?" Jake's tone turned resolute, the decision firm behind its softness.
He could feel the beckoning call of those silent histories, eager for attention. If he were to confront the past, it couldn't be an exercise of mere excavation. It would require acknowledgement, compassion, and courage. The stories of women, especially, find a way to imprint themselves upon spaces. Listen to what this place has offered, what it's been willing to share, the man replied with authority. Your journey won't only reveal their narratives, but could also rekindle parts within you that you thought had long been dormant. Jake absorbed those words, each syllable resonating deeply. The implications of embracing this engagement captivated him. Reflecting on Clara's innocence and burgeoning understanding of their shared journey filled him with purpose. Here lay a lesson of hope, interwoven within the fibers of their reality, a chance to shape their own legacy, molded from the narratives they would revive together. "Why don't we start by exploring those clippings?" he suggested, a sense of urgency tasting bitter and sweet on his tongue. "We can decode the stories that linger beyond these walls. If they've waited this long, we have the responsibility to listen." He felt invigorated, purpose surging within him, that deep-rooted desire to harness his inherited past and redirect its energy into something that would empower his future. Each step toward the trunk felt monumental. He embraced the unknown ahead. As he settled back with Clara, armed with old articles and letters clutched in their hands, the chill of uncertainty still lingered, but something else accompanied them now: resolve. The past was an unfamiliar territory, yet together they could navigate it with understanding, fueled by love and determination. Their exploration deepened. The gentle flutter of papers combined with the cadence of Clara's questions, curious, honest, inquiring. Jake's fears began to transform into moments of clarity, the threads of heritage connecting him profoundly to Clara, weaving their tale into this tapestry of history, until they stumbled upon a striking photo within a letter, two women holding each other, laughter captured in that ephemeral moment. Yet behind their joy lurked shadows in their eyes. "Who are they, Dad?" Clara's voice, a pitch higher than before, ignited a fresh swell of curiosity. Jake's breath paused, his heart racing again as the realization hit him. The women were tied to something he desperately needed to understand. The next piece of their journey was beginning to unravel, a truth that could reshape everything he thought about his past and present. "Let's find out," he replied, a trepidation mingling with exhilaration, knowing that resolving this mystery and confronting it was only the beginning. But as he spoke, a sudden chill swept through the room, and the eeriness of old memories crept in once more, a sobering reminder that the shadows they unearthed might demand far more than mere acknowledgement.
Jake's mind swirled with the tension between apprehension and anticipation as he stared at the faded photograph. The two women, so joyful yet burdened by an intangible weight, seemed to call out to him from the abyss of his family history. "Who are you really?" he murmured to himself, the need for uncovering hidden truths morphing into a palpable urgency. It struck him that the journey wasn't merely academic, it was deeply personal. These women were not just nameless faces, they were pieces of a larger puzzle that included his identity and, by extension, Clara's. He turned to Clara, who was still fascinated by the photograph. "Your great-grandmothers, I think," he said slowly, as if the words were still taking shape in his mind. "Great-grandmothers?" Clara looked up with wide eyes. "What were they like?" Jake hesitated. He had no idea. The few fragments of stories shared across family gatherings didn't do justice to real lives. He began to wonder what their joys, struggles, and dreams were, what decisions led them to their own adolescence, far removed from the moments captured in time. If he could only piece together their lives, perhaps he could finally unravel his own. "Let's see what else we can find," he suggested, his resolve forming like unwavering steel. He pulled another letter from the trunk, fingers brushing lightly over the inked words that had endured the passage of time. As he read aloud, the narrative revealed itself. One letter spoke of aspirations quashed by societal expectations, while another expressed a yearning for freedom, a hunger to escape from obligations that felt suffocating. With every turn of the page, he felt a tug on the fabric of his own existence, those voices echoing familiar sentiments of fear and aspiration. A profound realization began to bloom within him. Each narrative was a reminder that emotional legacies had been passed down through generations, shaping their identities like the soil nurtures roots. It incited a deeper reflection on his own choices as a father, how he balanced responsibilities against aspirations unfulfilled. "Dad," Clara's voice pulled him from his thoughts, and he glanced at her, noticing the intensity in her gaze.
Do you think I'll be able to hear their stories? Her innocence and genuine curiosity struck him. In that moment, he felt the waves of his own fears crashing against the rocks of his determination. This wasn't just about understanding the women in the photograph. It was a chance to cultivate a new narrative, one that would empower both him and Clara. Absolutely, he assured her, newfound confidence gracing his words. We can uncover these stories together. They are as much a part of you as they are of me. As they sifted through more letters, he became acutely aware that he was not merely digging into the past. He was redefining their path forward. With every document they peruse, Jake felt pieces of himself shifting, adjusting in the light of newfound understanding.
What had once been dormant within him began to awaken, an unquenchable thirst for authenticity, complexity woven into relationships, and unyielding love. But the chill in the air persisted, reminding him that this unearthing came with consequences. Would those hidden stories match his understanding, or would they unravel assumptions he'd long held? Clara, we must be prepared for anything, he cautioned, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. These stories may reveal truths we're not ready for. Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully, absorbing his words. Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we need the most, right? To understand ourselves? Jake looked at her, admiration swelling within. Her wisdom belied her age, and he considered the possibility that this journey was teaching them both, not just about the past, but about bravery in confronting the unknown. As they continued their exploration, the winds outside grew restless, howling against the farmhouse walls, amplifying an ambiance of uncertainty. Just then, Jake stumbled upon a yellowed scrap of paper with a swirling signature at the bottom, the contents obscured by time. He swallowed hard, knowing that whatever followed could be a turning point. The next letter in his hands, and with it the promise of a revelation that might shatter the barriers he had so carefully constructed around his past. What does it say? Clara's eager voice brought him back, urging him to unlock the secrets of the paper that held potential both exhilarating and terrifying. Jake took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, unaware that what he would unveil could dictate both their futures. With a trembling hand, he began to read. The parchment crackled softly in the air, its texture brittle from age. Jake focused his gaze on the faded ink, willing the words to flow from the page and reshape the narrative he had been crafting from scraps of memory. As he read aloud, the words pushed forward their haunting revelations. To my dearest daughters, though we are separated by distance, know that my love and regrets linger with you always. Trust that the sacrifices made will someday lead you to the understanding of your own identities. The weight of the message settled heavily in the room, his voice trembling with each line. Clara's small hand tightened around his, echoing the protective bond that had been forged through years of hardship. Jake realized that the struggles of his great-grandmothers were not ancient echoes, but lifelines that intertwined with his very own experience. Each letter punctuated with the threads of untold stories, linking them all in a shared quest for resilience. Torn between obligation and dream, he continued, his heart racing as the next line unfolded. It is our search for freedom that births our daughters. Fight for it. Let your voices rise above the shadows.
Tears pricked at Jake's eyes, realizing the power in the words, a legacy not just of hurt, but of empowerment and the pursuit of stories left untold. He could barely contain the swell of emotion enveloping him. His great-grandmothers had understood the importance of their voices and sought to arm their progeny with wisdom, something he felt compelled to honor. "Do you see it, Clara?" he said, his voice thick with emotion, turning his gaze toward her radiant, inquisitive eyes. "This is our inheritance, a call to reclaim our narratives, to write our stories rather than allow past shadows to dictate our current paths." "I understand, Dad," Clara replied, her youthful innocence suffused with newfound gravity. The moment seemed to crystallize around them, and in those fragile seconds, Jake felt a burgeoning responsibility bolt through him, a commitment to raise his children not just as a caretaker, but as a storyteller, an architect of futures. Having broken through the rusted chains of inherited sorrow, Jake's resolution solidified. He would weave together the richness of their pasts, not out of obligation, but as a dedication to change and illuminate the darkness. The shackles still clung to the walls, remnants echoing cautionary tales, but they wouldn't define their existence. "What if we created something here?" Clara suggested, her face lighting up with possibility. "We could tell their stories, all the stories. We could paint, write, build them into this farmhouse, make it a place where everyone can remember. A broad smile stretched across Jake's face at the brilliance of her imagination. Yes, together we could transform this place into a sanctuary, a canvas for voices that need to be heard, a testament to resilience like our own. As they spoke, excitement blossomed. The looming shadows were beginning to recede, making way for possibility. Working alongside Clara, and, if they allowed, with Clara's burgeoning friendship with Mia, they could breathe new life into their shared histories, an intertwining of art that celebrates bonds across generations. Jake felt a deep sense of vindication welling in him. The farmhouse, once a reminder of sorrow, began to transform into a vibrant space for creativity, a foundation for newfound connections among the people enmeshed in its history, including the echoes of voices long gone. He envisioned gatherings within the reclaimed walls, conversations buzzing freely and laughter tasting sweet against the backdrop of reclaimed joy. Now we build, he declared firmly, determination igniting his voice, not just with bricks and paint, but with the memories we will cherish and share. And I'll teach you the importance of storytelling. Our family's journey doesn't stop with me. It must evolve through us. Clara nodded enthusiastically, inspiration rippling through her. Let's start with what we know. These letters, those photos. We can interview people in town, too, so they can share their stories of pain and hope.
Exactly, Jake beamed. We'll honor the past. We'll write new chapters based on love that connects us all. With each passing moment, Jake felt the walls of isolation begin to crumble. The air thick with possibility felt electric as the spirits in the farmhouse leaped alive. They would not only redeem their own stories, but also continue the legacy of strength that permeated their family. Finally standing, he gathered the letters, the photographs, and the artifacts brushed from the remnants of time. Let's start now, he said decisively. Together, father and daughter ventured into fresh territories of creation, visions blossoming into full view. Each stroke of paint and each word written would unfurl the threads of a beautiful narrative, redeeming the shadows that had haunted his family's history for too long. In that shared endeavor stood the true realization of Jake's evolution, transcending personal loss by fostering connections through art and storytelling. The farmhouse would emerge as a living testament of love, the walls infused with narratives of struggle and triumph, all layered under the skin of its history. As they worked side by side in the fading light, a gentle breeze swept through the open window, rustling the papers like whispered encouragements from the past. Hope lit the air, tangling around them, a definitive step into the potential of healing and renewal, leading them unwavering into a future alive with possibility. Jake soared within himself, restored by the knowledge that he had not only found his voice, but he had also initiated a journey of transformation. The past would never fade, but standing hand in hand with Clara, they would paint their story into an unbroken continuum that thrived on resilience, understanding, and the shared beauty of forging a new path, a shared music between generations that would forever whisper against the walls of their now vibrant home. Now, it was time to tell their story, to feed the narrative that would carry them forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and let the world know you're a true fan of personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second to share.